I now call the March 12, 2019 meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education to order. First order of business is the adoption of the agenda. I will now entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I now turn to Margaret Marshall, board member from District 5, to introduce tonight's pledge leader.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce our student pledge leader, Kendall Cuevas. And Kendall is a proud fifth grader at Cotswold IB World School. As a fifth grade student, she is a member of the Cotswold National Elementary Honor Society. And during her time at Cotswold, Kendall has been identified as a model student, which is exemplified through her character, commitment, and academics. Currently, she is a cheerleader for the Cougar Cheer Squad at Cotswold, and in her free time, she enjoys spending time with her family. And she's accompanied tonight by her mother and father, Sherry and Jonathan Cuevas, Assistant Principal Kurt Fruent, Central 2 Executive Director Aquanetta Edmond, and Central 2 Community Superintendent Tara Lynn Sullivan. Thank you, Kendall.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stand. Courage. Courage to me means to be brave and to have confidence in yourself. It also means to always think positive and do your best no matter what. Making mistakes are part of life, and having the courage to try is what matters the most. I believe our fifth grade class showed courage during our exhibition presentations. We were all brave and remained positive throughout the day. Our projects were a big hit within the community and our school. The school board also showed courage when they voted to merge our two schools, Billingsville and Cotswold, together. When this happened, students, regardless of their economic status, were given access to a strong IB program on two campuses. So far in my fifth grade year, my friends from both campuses showed courage by making new friends and helping expand our community. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Before we proceed tonight, we have some great things to say, but I do want to recognize Commissioner Velma Leak, who represents the most powerful district in all of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and that is District 2. Madam, please stand, and thank you for being here with us. Tonight, we're going to recognize three individuals who have touched hundreds, if not thousands, of students and changed their lives for the better. March, as you know, is National Social Work Month, and the first week of March is designated School Social Work Week. All of us recognize that social and emotional health is critical to our mission of educating children. Effective social workers elevate and empower our students, teaching them to solve problems, navigate around personal roadblocks, and get the resources needed to be successful. Our district has put a strong emphasis on social emotional support for our students. And in recognition of that commitment and to honor National Social Work Week, I want to lift up two people who have made significant and lasting contributions to our students' well-being, Rose Smith and Rhonda Armistead. Rose Smith is a school social worker at Hornets Nest Elementary. Rose, if you're in the building, can you please stand? Thank you. And remain standing. She is also the 2019 CMS School Social Worker of the Year. Ms. Smith exemplifies social work values in every area of her life. She works diligently at Hornets Nest and is a lead school social worker for CMS. But her commitment to helping others doesn't end there. She is active in the community, serves on various boards, and provides resources for struggling individuals through various channels. At Hornets Nest, she develops creative programming to increase parent engagement, and thank you for that. She gives 100% every day with a huge, friendly smile. Ms. Smith, we want to thank you for what you do for our students. Please come forward to receive your certificate of recognition, and please know that we value and appreciate your work. Congratulations on being the 2019 CMS School Social Worker of the Year. Board, please stand with me as we honor Ms. Rose Smith. Now, we will recognize Rhonda Armistead. Rhonda, would you please stand if you're in the house? Okay. Ms. Armistead has received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Association of School Psychologists. She retired in August 2018 after 21 years and 11 months with CMS. In that time, she helped thousands of students. She connected them with a caring adult. She showed them where to find resources for basic needs. She directed them to mental health supports, to housing, and to mentors. In doing this, she helped these students navigate around obstacles that could have been barriers to success. Ms. Armistead, we thank you for your many years of service to our children. We are proud of your recognition by your peers, and we are grateful to you for all you have done to help students. Please come forward to receive a certificate expressing our appreciation for your service. Board, please stand with me. Now, we will recognize Marie Delaney. Ms. Delaney is a school counselor at Piedmont IB Middle School. She is also a 2019 winner of the Marvin R. Pittman North Carolina Champions for Education Award. These awards are given by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction to recognize individuals who demonstrate an extraordinary commitment to student success, who exemplify leadership in education, and make a significant impact on students in our state. Mrs. Delaney could not join us tonight, but accepting her certificate this evening is her esteemed colleague, Dr. Coltrane Penn. Congratulations, Dr. Delaney, and Dr. Penn, would you come forward to collect? Thank you all for that moment of appreciation for some of the successful employees that we have here, and hopefully we can always recognize success when it is exemplified in the three persons that we just honored here tonight. Now we move to requests from the public. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board, unless you're speaking as a group. And if you are speaking as a group, each person of the group must speak. Not one or two, but if it is three, all three should speak. You may talk about any topic of your choosing, but neither personal nor individual matters may be addressed in this forum. Neither personal attacks will be allowed. No profanity or inappropriate language may be used. The board reserves the right to cut off any speaker who violates these rules. I will call the following individuals to come down front to the microphones, and we do have two. Please speak in the order in which you are called. Our first speaker is Luke Drago, Leslie Oliver, Anthony Wright, Laura Garrett Hayes. Clerk, do we have the timer ready? Luke, you may begin.
Good evening, Dr. Wilcox and members of the Board of Education. My name is Luke Drago, and I'm a junior at Ardrey Kell High School. A day after the Butler High School shooting, I addressed this board and pleaded with you for comprehensive security policies that would keep myself and my fellow students safe in our schools. In response, CMS began a new wanding policy late January. It works like this. CMS searches roughly 4 rooms in a high school at most twice a semester and calls that a victory. That's 120 students screened per screening per school. And at Ardrey Kell, that's only 3.5% of students. 3.5% of students checked for guns 4 times a year is hardly a comprehensive security plan. But all of that could be excused if this policy has worked. So since this policy began, what's happened in our schools? On February 8th, a phone with 2 pictures of people with guns in a school was found in McClintock Middle School. On February 19th, a student was found with a gun at South Meck High School. 3 weeks prior, a screening at South Meck found no weapons in 4 classrooms the district bothered to check. On February 21st, a gun was found at Ranson Middle School's campus. On February 27th, Myers Park High School went into lockdown after 2 separate gun-related incidents in one day. And on February 28th, 2019, a shooting threat was discovered in a bathroom at Ardrey Kell High School, my school. That's the 2nd time we've had a school shooting threat since I've been at Ardrey Kell. And yet somehow, CMS has yet to find a single weapon in their search program. None of these guns were found through wanding. So what's the solution? An actual metal detector policy. I had to walk into a metal detector to get into this chamber for your safety, and yet this board has the audacity to tell me that I cannot be afforded the same protections. Isn't it telling that this building does not have a problem with guns entering the chamber, but our schools do? Metal detectors stop guns from coming into this building. They should be used to stop guns from coming into my school. Dr. Wilcox, you told reporters that wanding students a few times a year was a gross indignity. Yet, the only gross indignity that I see here is the amount of firearms that keep finding their way into our classrooms. The gun problem is getting worse, not better. And these incidents cannot be allowed to turn into another statistic. We can and we will do better. We as a community will not stand for one more gun in one more classroom. Members of the board, I'm eligible to vote this year, and I'll be voting for candidates of this board that commit to metal detector policies that keep guns out of our classrooms. I hope that I'll be able to cast my first vote for one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Wilcox and School Board. My name is Leslie Oliver. I'm an ELA teacher at Walter G. Byers School, a year-round school. A bit of your time to reconsider, a bit of your time to think about the shifts that are coming for our own students and families, our year-round students and families, the kids that are wondering where they will go next, what will happen to their hopes when June comes. Where will they go when the last bus leaves? Who will they share their hopes with? Their hopes for next year with? With all due respect, you have your obligations, but I have mine. I have to speak for my kids, my Byers babies. The kids, they have their obligations. I have mine. Yes, I have to take time and weigh all the options. And the kids, the teachers at Byers, well, we have time to. You're taking a month of my students' consistency, of their structure, of their safety places, of their peace. A month of my teaching, a month of my hoping, of my pushing them to engage their text, to connect to their learning, to explore, to learn at their levels, in their way, in their environment of wonder. A bit of your time, please. You've taken a bunch of hours to leave us with a summer full of, I'll recover, I'll survive July, but will my students? Thank you.
Thank you.
In this day and time, where materialism is all-encompassing, and the world of technology and rivalry have depleted the need for unanimity It is important to be a part of something that cuts through cultural, global, physical, and communal barriers, education. Good evening, Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board members. My name is Anthony Wright, and I am the middle school counselor at Walter G. Byers School. I come to you this evening on behalf of our most precious asset and gift, the youth of today. The recent vote to end the continuous learning calendar for 4 of the most critically high-need schools on Charlotte's West Side corridor spells disaster for more than 1,700 students. This impact is something that will be felt by all students, families, and communities alike. As an educator, serving in this high-need environment to positively empower our students academically, socially, and emotionally, some of which cannot be measured or understood from the outside looking in. I say that this 5-2 vote contradicts your belief and commitment to providing all students with the opportunity to perform to their fullest potential and ensure that there is no discernible difference between the achievement levels of students by race, gender, or economic level. There's no secret that there's a discernible difference in this city, which transfers to our education system. It's a system of the have and the have-nots. Furthermore, you know the data shows that the summer learning loss is greater amongst disadvantaged, minority, and low-income youth. Is this not the reason why a continuous learning calendar was developed in the first place? Are we truly focused on equity, or are we in support of President Trump's budget proposal that eliminates after-school and summer programs for students in high-poverty areas? Stripping and denying our children of quality educational programming in the summer is what your vote has done, not to mention widening the achievement gap. So where do we go from here? Being solution-focused on character, academic achievement, and personal excellence for all students, I would like to recommend that CMS School Board develop and implement a quality summer enrichment program for students of the former continuous learning schools, giving our scholars access to programming that will engage them in positive activities during the summer while focusing on STEM, increasing literacy and math skills, and leveling the educational plane within CMS to create globally competitive students. It is written that the harvest is truly plentiful, but the leaders are few. Will you elected leaders answer the charge to ensure our children are safe during the summer, have access to summer meals and rich learning opportunities, as well as adhere to your mission of maximizing academic achievement by every student in every school? My hope is that you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes, before you speak, let me call down a group. Amanda Thompson, Isaiah McConaughey, James Boyer, and Leisha Mayhew. Yeasia. Okay, thank you. Leasia. Okay, our speaker is Ms. Garrett Hayes.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson and the board. I don't have a whole lot I don't have a long speech and I don't have a lot of numbers or percentages, but I just really wanted to say that this decision coming when it did, it kind of sets up a situation where many of our children who were planning on being in school this summer have now, there's no option for them. And unfortunately, many of our parents are not in a financial position where they can now come up with something else for their children to do. We have many children who this particular setup has been very beneficial for them because, as my colleague stated, they don't have long gaps of time without them being in school. And that's beneficial for them for many reasons. For one thing, they in school and they're learning, and also due to the poverty levels, many of them, food-wise. So my concern is, so what's in place for them? Is there going to be a lunch? Is there going to be something there? Will the return of other tutorial programs be implemented? I just have a concern for what's going to happen to them with this particular decision that has been made. And I'd also like to speak on behalf of some of the educators. I myself, I'm blessed. I have a husband. So with this decision being made late in the year, I will be okay. I'll have a month to figure out. But like I said, I have a husband with an income, so it'll be less difficult for me. But for some of my younger colleagues who are single, new teachers, what will they do? Because as our children's educators, we need our educators to have a peace of mind. We need them to be in a mental place where they are able to grapple with all of the things that concern them as teachers and what they need to prepare for children. And if they're consumed with their own circumstances, then that can make that rather difficult. So we'd just like for you to consider all of these things and hopefully make a decision that benefits everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Today, me and my classmates will be talking about the STEM enrichment program this summer.
Hello, my name is Azir Makanika. Over the past 2 years that I have attended Walter G. Byers, this school has improved dramatically. We have been exposed to new programs, guest speakers, technology, and more. Also, I feel like our school helps us no matter what situation comes our way, in or outside of school. For example, if we don't have enough clean clothes, are unable to take a shower, or keep with our basic hygiene needs, our school always makes it the least of our worries. I feel that the fact of us being a year-round school plays a huge role in this due to several unfortunate situations that students may go through over the summer. These situations can be seized due to the early arrival back to school. When it comes down to the basic needs of food and water, some kids may not have the access, going meal to meal and or not having running water at home. Students also may need a place to get away from any out-of-school struggles. So I, Azir Makanika, would like to support the idea of having a summer enrichment program taught by our teachers because they really understand and help us grow.
Hello, my name is Liasia Mayhew. Today I am here to explain to you how my school has changed over time and how it has helped me since I've been here. I've been at Walter G. Byers, currently a CLC school, for 3 years. I think this school has come a very long way academically with the year-round support. We have gone from an F school to a D school. More specifically, I have went from a C student to an A student. Year-round school calendars with intercession camps has helped me make up all my missing work, get help when I'm confused, and learn more about our community as we do research and project-based activities during break. Our year-round school have helped me improve my behavior as well. The calendar gave me structures throughout the summer months and connected me with community partners. Communities and schools. One of the community partners has provided me with all my needs for school and helped me improve my grades and learn how to express my feelings. The ongoing summer with the year-round calendars helped me develop into a scholar more confident and active in both school and community. My grades have improved and school is now more important to me. Since the calendar helped me so much, I am sad to see it eliminate, but since you have chosen to eliminate and continuous learning calendar, you all should have a summer STEM program for our students. A new STEM magnet school, it would help us have a smooth transition to a new calendar this year. This would be, and still be able to have a similar academic support throughout the summer.
Hello, my name is James Boyer. Walter G. Byers has impacted me in so many different ways. I have never had so many great teachers that care so much about not only my education, but me as a person. I was what they call a bad child, but this school really helped and changed me. Being able to talk to our teachers about anything. Our counselor helped me both mentally and physically. I'm thankful for being able to see how our school programs really help improve our education. Having Saturday school will really help me with academics and work needed in providing weeks before the EOG. A STEM summer program will help me and other students be prepared for the next grade. And this would really help the people that have gaps during the school year. In conclusion, this is how Walter G. Byers has impacted me and can continue to impact scholars.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Thompson. I'm a National Board Certified Teacher in Special Education. I'm also a certified math coach. As you can see, this is what CLC Schools builds. We build leaders. Our school is home for so many. It's the only place where there's some consistency. Our school, with the help of community partners, such as Communities in Schools and A Child's Place, provide year-round social, emotional, academic support. You all asked us to complete a survey with all stakeholders regarding CLC schools, and based on the data from every school, we wanted it. That means that 80% of us actually who work and support our students daily believed in CLC schools. With the vote of 5-2, you ended a lifeline for my school community. It was a loss that night. I need to come and advocate. I could not give up on the scholars of all 4 schools who need our support. The parents who work 2 and 3 jobs cannot always come and advocate for themselves. My scholars, in lieu of their parents tonight, came and did an amazing job. I'm proposing that we offer a summer STEM enrichment program and provide transportation for at least this summer. This is not a camp led by outside agencies, but a STEM enrichment program led by educators who know and work with these scholars already. This will assist us in to continue to decrease the academic gaps. Having a STEM enrichment program will not only provide academic support, but it will provide accountability, adult supervision, and a safe place for our scholars. I know the price tag was one of the main reasons for the vote last week, but we're looking at 2 potential price tags: future prisons and funerals versus academic and career success. As Frederick Douglass once said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Strong communities, strong schools build strong students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Earlene Lyde, Tamika Vaughn, Sky Fuller, Kevin Strawn. And Ira Laverne Reed.
Good evening. My name is Earlene Lyde, and I teach chemistry and physical science at West Charlotte High School. We are so proud of our young men who will be playing for the 4A state championship on Saturday. I'm also the president of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Association of Educators. As I listened and read about the decisions surrounding the continuous learning calendar, I understood the fiscal decision to change course. I also believe, though, that too many times in our kids' lives, programs end abruptly. Adults disappear, and they are left to wonder why. I ask that you make this time different by setting up some type of transition program, and I like the idea that they just proposed about a STEM summer school or summer program, through which the kids are able to process this change in their lives. I was offering a modified reading camp or a mini summer school or something of that sort involving children who looked forward to and attended the program during the previous summers. We've got to stop just abruptly changing children's lives and giving them trauma. On a different topic, CMA presented its budget request and asked that the local teacher supplement be raised to match or exceed that of Wake County. We asked that our low-wage workers receive a 3% raise next year and that a plan be put into place that ensures all wages are raised so that the lowest salary would be $15 an hour in 2 to 3 years. We also asked that teacher assistants be given a 5% raise because we were appalled at their poor salary when compared to their importance in our classrooms. We must get them to 100% market rate by next year and let them know that we appreciate all they do for our babies and our colleagues. Raise their pay next year to a level that recognizes how important teacher assistants are to every part of this educational experience. Last but not least, we ask that the district take a look at what Wake County is doing around equity. Not only do they have an equity office in the central division, but each school has an equity program in which parents, students, teachers, everybody plays a part in looking at what's going on and what's best for those kids. And this is what I tried to convey the last time I talked about not having a big bureaucratic equity committee, but being able to drill that down to the individual school levels. And I think someone is also going to talk to you about integrating African American studies into courses and into schools, and I hope you know that we will support that. The decision to do that by the superintendent could go a little further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sky Fuller, and I am a student at Levine Middle College High School. I stand before you to talk about my senior graduation project, a topic that speaks to me personally. In my graduation paper, I wrote about the importance of a fine arts education in public schools and why we should fund them. As it has been shown in numerous studies worldwide, there is a tremendous benefit in the cognitive abilities of children after they have received an arts education. So if we know that it would help our children, then why do we not value a fine arts education as much as we would do any other class? I stand before you as a student who is in an art class and knows what fundraising is like so that we can support our music program. At the beginning of the year, we are given $0, and to support our choir program alone, we have to raise between $30,000 to $40,000 to fund everything. For the past month, I have been volunteering with 2nd and 4th graders at Villa Heights Elementary School, a Title I school here in CMS. I have been blessed with all the opportunities that I have been given, but I have an unfair advantage to those students. I have grown up in a completely different area of town, and simply based on where I live, I have received a completely different education than they do, simply because of the average income of my school zone. When I was in elementary school, my art classes consisted of singing every day and performing in school musicals and concerts. But while I was at Villa Heights, I learned that most of these children do not get the opportunity to experience these things that I would have considered to be simple, although that is unintentional. And as a school that consists of low-income families, opportunities are already limited, and raising tens of thousands of dollars per year for one class is highly improbable. So I stand before you to say that you should fund fine arts in public schools to allow more opportunities for the students in this school system, of all ages, races, ethnicities, and socioeconomic classes. I know that I cannot possibly cover every reason as to why you should fund arts education in the 3 minutes that I have been allotted, but I urge you to consider it. I urge you to consider it not just for the Title I schools in CMS or just for elementary schools, but for all students in CMS to receive a quality education that will benefit them for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Tamika Bond, and I am a mother. On November 15th, 2018, my 4-year-old daughter was assaulted, spit on, and punched repeatedly in the stomach by a little boy on her school bus. The following day, the driver stated that he vaguely remembered the incident. The school had no idea what transpired, as the little boy did not even receive a write-up. After several meetings, emails...
Bond, you are addressing a personal item. If you would like to talk with someone about a situation that has not been handled.
It's been handled.
It has been
Yes,
handled?
ma'am.
Okay. So, can we move beyond the
Yes.
personal? Okay.
After making several phone calls, emails, and attending several meetings, I demanded that her school bus be assigned a school bus monitor. The driver's job on a school bus is to focus on the road, not to have to handle the children that's behind them. How could CMS not come to think that buses with over 15 pre-K students, in addition to K through 5, not need a bus monitor? The bullying even happens at school, as she was being bullied and assaulted 3 times after that. Please understand this. My child, as with every other child, goes to school to learn and to get an education, not worry about being bullied and teased, which is also what 95% of the children at Center of Hope Homeless Shelter experience. Why? Because CMS has a design to have a school bus pick them up from the shelter, yet that bus is already filled with children who has a home. So now these quote-unquote shelter children have to face being taunted on a daily basis because they are homeless. This affects a child's behavior, academic functions, and more. I do not want to hear children will be children. Put yourself in my shoes. What if this was your child? Your lack of urgency to bullying, lack of organization, and school system failed my daughter several times. However, please note that as her mother, I will not fail at being her advocate and bringing light to an issue and making sure that there's a resolution. My question to you is, what changes are you going to bring to ensure that no bullying rule is enforced in these CMS schools? I can recommend that you guys have tougher consequences for bullying, or at least start having meetings with these children's parents to put an end to this. This has to stop, and it's going to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strawn?
Hi, my name is Kevin Strawn. I am a happily retired math teacher. Good to be back. I brought some friends with me this evening. They thought they might stand up when I started speaking. I recently heard Austin Channing Brown, author of Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness, tell about leading and participating in workshops about racism. She said that inevitably, sometime during the second day, an older white woman would begin to quietly sob. The program would stop, and those around her would console her, and then she would say, "I'm so sorry. I never knew about any of this." It appears that in all her years in school, there were no history lessons about what it meant to be black in America. Perhaps some terms like Reconstruction or Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement were mentioned, but there were no lessons about lynching as a method of terrorizing African American communities. There was no study of the 1898 Wilmington Massacre and subsequent stealing of the seats of black elected officials in the North Carolina General Assembly. Why didn't we learn about the humiliation, intimidation, and brutal treatment of those who dared to attempt to register to vote? Even Chief Justice John Roberts missed the unit about government-led systematic segregation of housing across America, recently documented in the book The Color of Law. Until last month, I had never heard of Civil War hero Robert Smalls. Born into slavery, he hijacked a Confederate ship and eventually became a captain in the Union Navy. He was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1874. There are many more lessons completely left out of the curriculum, and these are just the lessons about being black in America. Consider the history not taught about the treatment of Native Americans, Mexicans, Asians, and anybody else who is not white. Since the beginning of public schools in North Carolina, white history has been the only history taught. If we are to collectively understand each other and where we are going, we must have a knowledge and understanding of our collective past. I am not talking about an elective course in Black history or Latin American studies. It is time to expand our required courses to include the history of all Americans, not just the white ones. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, before you speak, let me call the next group. Arthur Griffin, Janine Bryant, Gregory Rankin. Okay. You may begin.
Thank you, Ms. McCray. Thank you, board members. And thank you, Dr. Wilcox. I am Ira Laverne Reed. I am a 39-year veteran, retired educator. 30 of those years I worked right here in Charlotte. I know the difference between an elective and a required course. For many years, I taught in isolation, and I taught everything that was required. I took for granted that that was going on in those other classrooms. However, I was sorely wrong when I received a job that I was not teaching in the classroom. It is very important that everyone in this country, and especially North Carolina, because sometimes I feel like we're in a country all our own with all of the things, all of the political things that have been happening to us lately. That's another story. I'd like to share with you the thought that Kevin talked about earlier. I'd like to share with my grandchildren the fact that they will not learn about the contributions that African Americans have made, that Hispanic Americans have made, and any other group other than the basic Europeans that came to this country so many years ago. If we don't make it a requirement, it is not going to happen. Over the last couple of months, I had the joy to visit into many of Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools during a membership bliss for the group that I volunteer with. And during the month of February, I could tell the schools where they were teaching that elective course, African American Studies. I could see the pride that existed among those children that looked like me. In the schools that I went to where it was an elective course, but because it's not a requirement, if the administrator doesn't have a staff member that wants to teach it or is qualified to teach it, it doesn't happen. So even though it can happen, it doesn't happen, because what is not measured doesn't happen. I could go on and I could tell a lot of stories, but it boils down to this. We have got to do better here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. I am so proud to have worked in this school. We have so many good attributes. Could we please add this? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. And it's nice to see that our retirees are all wearing red, CMS colors.
Good evening, school board members, Superintendent Wilcox. When communities of color experience trauma, it is a common expectation that they will survive, carry on, and move forward. But at what cost? And what if the system is causing the trauma? Overwhelmingly tonight, we've heard from students, we've heard from teachers, we've heard from parents. They are actually begging you for arts access, for STEM access. Some of these children were begging you to stay in school longer. This is disproportionately impacting our students of color. And your very own Breaking the Link report acknowledges the overwhelming correlation between the racial identity of students and their expected academic outcomes. As a mother, as a former CMS teacher, as an advocate for our students, I, Janine Bryant, am standing here in front of you today asking that you really start to consider how you are moving towards equity. As we are watching you, we know that it's not these poor kids that your hyper-focus on socioeconomic status is having us believe. We know that it's not even their zip codes, although we know that's a predictor. The reality is that overwhelmingly, the connective factor is that the race of these students that look like me are not having the best outcomes.
CMS board members, as well as CMS administration, continue to advertise to the community that equity is a priority. As the chair of the Education Committee for the Black Political Caucus and as a member of the community that follows education closely, I feel that equity is essential in improving our school system and should be considered in every single decision that is made. I am beginning to become discouraged and wonder if equity is really a priority to the board and its administration. If it isn't a priority, then there should be a sense of urgency. Back on February 10th, 2018, I attended the CMS board retreat at the UNCC Center City, where the board was charged with defining equity with the possibility of re-implementing the equity policy. More than a year later, there is still no equity policy. I've attended just about every equity policy committee meeting that has been discussed. I've observed committee members at times focus more on personality differences and not the policy itself. Even though the definition of equity has been established, it seems if members of the policy committee are trying to push their personal agendas around equity and not focus on the definition itself. Some members state equity is for all people. Some members not seeing the importance of metrics when creating an equity policy. Some not even seeing the importance and values of positions such as media specialists when discussing equity. While committee members seem to be pushing agendas, the least of these are suffering. Our students need you to complete this equity policy now and urgently. We're asking that the policy be completed by April. We're also asking that an equity policy also involve an advisory panel be formed, be put in place so the voice of the community can be heard and be a part of the discussion around equity.
Good evening, Ms. McCray, board members, and Dr. Wilcox. I want to thank you for your service to this community. I'm speaking to you this evening on behalf of the Black Political Caucus of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. I know all of you, and many I consider to be a friend. I know how tough this job can be, and I appreciate your commitment to this work. However, tonight, I want you to know leadership matters. As a Board of Education, you have failed to provide a sound basic education for too many of Charlotte-Mecklenburg's African-American students. Last year, 31% of African-American students graduated college and/or career ready, compared to 75% white students. 54.3% of African-American students, over half, scored at the lowest academic achievement levels of 1 and 2, while 77.9% of white students were scoring at the highest levels 4 and 5. These consistent metrics are unconscionable and violates both the letter and spirit of the Leandro decision. We are in a period of time now where the State Board of Education and the General Assembly jointly want to throw in the towel on Leandro. I'm asking CMS to do everything you can do to comply with Leandro and not give up on our children by innocently aiding and abetting institutional racism. Your adopted policy, IKE, in March of 2017, requiring every student that is failing or at risk of failing to have supplemental support. Students scoring at the academic levels 1 and 2 ought to be considered for intervention support. Remember, there are 54.3% of African American students in grades 3 through 12 that should be getting supplemental help, and an unknown number of kindergartners through grade 2. What is your advocacy and sense of urgency? You said, and I quote, "The standard treatment protocol is a major shift that requires multiple years to fully implement. It will require significant financial resources, professional development, and leadership focus at all levels of the organization. Leadership matters." This is what I meant by aiding and abetting institutional racism. If you publish a school board policy and then ignore it, 54.3% of African American students can't afford to wait multiple years. Also in 2016, Advanced Ed Accreditation asked you to complete the following in 2 years. 1, operationalize equity to address achievement in learning. 2, include an expectation that every graduate completes a college or career readiness program. 3 years have passed and no equity advisory committee or policy, and no expectation that more than 31% of African American students will graduate college and/or career ready. Where is the urgency? In 2004, the state Supreme Court stated in part, "The world economy and technological advances of the 21st century mandate the necessity that the state step forward boldly and decisively to see that all children, without regard to their socioeconomic circumstances," I repeat that, without regard to their socioeconomic circumstances, have an educational opportunity and experience that not only meet the constitutional mandate set forth in Leandro, but fulfill the dreams and aspirations of the founders of our state and nation. Whether the state meets this challenge remains to be determined. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a front row seat to history. You get to see the chance to see and experience how institutional racism continues to exist in modern-day society. During Black History Month, we hear stories about constitutional rights afforded under the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. In contemporary times, I often hear community members struggle to understand how and why we are still dealing with racial disproportionality in society. Remember, in this case, student constitutional rights to a sound basic education were decided in 1997. 22 years later, we're still struggling to guarantee children their constitutional rights under Leandro, just as the entitlements were clear in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Then why and how are we continuing to deal with massive and unacceptable failure? In the book, The Fire Next Time, author James Baldwin speaks to the notion of time, how delaying tactics and time were used to maintain institutional racism and the denial of justice. Baldwin stated, "It simply wears you down." We have allowed the system to take charge again with implicit biases and de facto rules. After the Brown decision in 1954, the system embraced and used research by Dr. James Coleman to delay and defeat school desegregation. His research concluded that a child's background is a primary determinant of student success or failure. Shortly thereafter, another educator and researcher, Dr. Ron Edmonds, refuted Coleman's research by demonstrating the significant positive impact that effective schools can have on student outcomes. Now it appears that we are back to embracing the Coleman report. If you are poor, you can't learn at high levels. Leandro rejected this notion, and I stand as a personal testament that you can learn at high levels if you're poor. Please join the fight, implement policy IKE, operationalize equity in the distance. And as you all know, I give generously my time, my talent, and my treasures to my home school district, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you to each one of our speakers that came out tonight. That concludes our request from the public. Has Ernie Snoop come in yet?
I haven't heard. Seen them.
Ernest, you here yet? We now move to our consent items. Is there a motion that the board approve the consent items?
So moved. Second.
Before we move to a vote, does any board member wish to pull any part of this item for individual consideration? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, thank you. We have no action items tonight. Now move to reports and information items. First is report on budget amendments for January 2019. Turn to the superintendent for this report.
As presented.
The next is the report on financial statements for January 2019. I turn to the superintendent for this report.
As presented.
Next is the report on capital project ordinances for January 2019. I turn to the superintendent for this report.
And again, as presented.
Next is our report on calendar development process for the 2020-2021 academic calendar. I turn to the superintendent for this report.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to ask Angie Bartels to come downstairs and speak to the board. As most of you know, we've had numerous discussions in small groups with this, but I think this is the first time the community will hear where we are with our calendar. We will not ask the board to vote tonight. It's merely a presentation and an opportunity for the board to ask questions that will inform the community. We will bring this back at our next board meeting.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. As Dr. Wilcox said, I'm here to present the calendar process, just to give you an overview, and then the options for the 2021 school year that have been developed to inform the superintendent's recommendation. I know you're well aware, but I'll just remind you of the process that we use each year when we develop the academic calendar. It begins with a cross-functional committee made up of stakeholders from around the district and community. I know you're well aware, but I'll just remind you, they come together and work to learn the requirements that are outlined for us in state statute, board policy, and regulation. From that, they develop some options, some draft options of calendars, and then select two to put forth for a public survey, which we conduct every year. So we combine that survey data with feedback from other stakeholder groups from around the district, so our employee groups, and give that to the superintendent, who then makes his recommendation to you all, which, as he mentioned, will happen later this month. The purpose of that cross-functional committee, again, is to represent a group larger than themselves, or of which they are a part. So we seek to have principals and teachers from every learning community as part of this committee. We have key central office leaders that serve with us, as well as parents and students, community members, and then members of faith-based organizations. And we'd like to thank our Board of Education representative this year, Sean Strain, for serving on the committee and giving us his time. We gather this group together for 2 meetings per year, and we teach them, or we highlight for them, the requirements that are part of state statute and board policy. And as I mentioned, they work to create options and then select the best 2 from amongst those to put forth in public survey. We also think a benefit of having this large cross-functional group is we develop sort of ambassadors for the calendar, so folks that are armed with all the knowledge of what goes into it, and then can share that with their with the groups that they represent. So real briefly, I won't dig into detail here, but I wanted to highlight for you some of what North Carolina state statute lists for us as the requirements that we need to maintain when we create calendar options. The first is that we have to have 215 employment days in total. So that's from the very first teacher workday in August to the very last teacher workday after the end of school. 185 of those days must be instructional days, so kids in our classrooms, or we have to have a minimum of 1,025 instructional hours. We use a 6-hour instructional day assumption when we calculate this. And so what that shows you is that if we did the math, at a minimum, no calendar should have less than 171 days in CMS. We also asked the committee, if possible, to build in an additional 6 days on top of that 171. And what this allows is for a couple things. It's for us to maintain the early release days that were instituted a few years back, and also to build in time for the superintendent to waive up to 4 makeup days. State statute also says we have to have 10 annual leave days and 11 holidays. The only one of which is mandatory is Veterans Day. We may not start prior to the Monday closest to August 26th, and we may not close school after the Friday closest to June 11th. I did want to point out that this year we asked the committee to consider that the Republican National Convention will be held in Charlotte in 2020 on the dates of August 24th through the 27th, which, if we do the calculation from state statute requirements, would be the potential first possible week of school in North Carolina. But we did ask them to consider that, since that's such a large community event, to consider that when they choose the start date on their options. CMS policy, as you know, ICA and the corresponding regulation exists to support the state statute, to reflect the law and give us some more guidance on specifically things like teacher work days, severe weather makeup days, and election day. Just as a reminder, board regulation states that an election day in a presidential election year must be a teacher work day, because of so many of our schools are used as polling places. So you'll notice that as part of every option that you'll be presented tonight, since 2020 will be a presidential election year. Primarily, the goal of the academic calendar is to promote and support instruction. So we ask groups to maintain an instructional focus when they're designing these options, specifically minimizing loss of instructional time and planning for large, uninterrupted instructional blocks. We also ask that the committee help to identify and take into consideration avoiding days that might have high absenteeism. Every year, there are many topics that are discussed amongst this very cross-functional stakeholder group, and they're not limited to what's on the screen, but some of the things we discussed this year in particular were end-of-quarter work days and how that benefits certain stakeholder groups, and then the length and structure of breaks seem to be an important topic to many of our stakeholders. In terms of makeup days, the committee is asked to place makeup days where they're likely to be needed and to recognize that Saturdays and breaks and holidays are very unpopular days for making up missed time. I did want to highlight that per board policy, the superintendent has the ability to waive up to 4 of our makeup days. And we do ask, as I mentioned, that if possible, the committee build in those 4 days so that we still meet the time requirements outlined in state statute. We recognize that work days are important for our instructional and school-based staff, so we do ask the committee to consider the work days at the beginning of the year, which we know schools primarily use to set up and to get ready for students to come back. We also ask them to recognize that end-of-year work days are helpful for closeout. And as you know, the Office of Academics has established a practice of early release days, which we've instituted a few years back, and that's to help with professional development for school-based staff. A few very important other considerations that we outline for the committee when they draft options. The first is we ask them to recognize major religious holidays that would represent the diversity of our community. The second thing is we ask them to recognize the need for winter break to be as long as possible, because we consistently hear from every stakeholder group that this is a very important consideration. So based on the results of this year's committee, there were 2 options that were developed and put forth for public survey, option A and option B. I'd like to highlight for you the differences between those 2 options now. With option A, there are 177 instructional days. It begins school on Friday, August 28th for students. Its first semester ends on January 25th in this option, and the end of third quarter happens on March 31st, with spring break corresponding right after for students, April 1st through the 9th. Option B has 176 instructional days. In this option, school starts on Monday, August 31st. The end of first semester is January 22nd. The end of third quarter is March 25th. And then spring break for both students and staff would be April 2nd through the 9th. Just a couple similarities between these 2 options to point out. Both of them include a work day on September 28th, which is Yom Kippur. They both have the same Thanksgiving and winter breaks, and then they both end for students on June 11th. So we put these 2 options forward for public survey on February 20th through the 27th, so it ran for a week. We actually started it 2 days prior, and then were made aware of a miscalculation on option B, which has since been corrected, and we reposted the survey on February 20th. From that day, for that week's time, we had more than 8,800 stakeholders participate in the survey, 75% of whom expressed a preference for option B. And you see in the presentation that all of the stakeholder groups that were represented in the survey, or that we gathered data on, preferred option B. We also ask the survey respondents what matters most to them when they select an option, so that we can be armed with that information as we move forward in the process. As I mentioned to you, 25% of people selected option A, and of those that did, just about half of them, or almost half of them, said that they did so because of the length and structure of spring break, which is 1 day longer for students in option A than it was in option B. When we asked the same question of the folks that selected option B, 75% of them said that they picked it because of the start date and the day of the week on which it starts, which, as a reminder, is a Monday. So we combined all of this survey feedback with some feedback that we received from superintendents' advisory councils for principals, support services, and teachers. And what that led the calendar committee to do was to come up with a hybrid option C to meet the needs of all these multiple stakeholder groups. So essentially, option C maintains all of the critical elements of option B, but the one change that's been made is moving the end of third quarter on option B from March 25th to March 31st, and the corresponding workday from the 26th to the 1st of April, which in effect makes spring break 1 day longer for students. So in summary, option C was developed based on all of this feedback, and it integrates option A's length and structure of spring break with all the other elements of option B. So that's what I have for you tonight. And as I mentioned, we will be working with the superintendent, and he'll bring his recommendation back for your ultimate vote and approval at the next meeting. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thank you, and I do want to also thank Mr. Strain for representing the board doing this endeavor. All right, questions, board members? Anyone? Well, Angie, I guess you just spelled it out for us, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, you have any comments about it?
We're pleased with the work. There was a lot of public engagement, a lot of community input. If we get questions during the course of the week, we'll share them with board members. And if you get questions from your constituents, please share them with either myself directly, or in this case, Angie is heading up that work, and I wouldn't be troubled at all if you'd share people directly to Angie.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
We now move to our report from the superintendent. I turn to the superintendent for his report.
Thank you very much. I have just a few comments this evening, but a couple things I just feel kind of compelled to say. One, the young man who spoke tonight about guns, he is absolutely right. We have discovered more guns, but I think the other place that he's absolutely wrong is that this system has done an awful lot to take a careful look at what we're doing, and I would remind the young man and those present that kids are our first and best weapon against guns on campuses. Kids that stay away from guns, but also kids that report guns when they know that they're making their way onto our campuses. And quite frankly, yes, we've had one tragedy at Butler High School, but all of the guns that the young man mentioned were discovered either because a caring adult had a relationship with a student, or students had an important relationship with others on the campus, and they told us that those guns were there. And so I think that, there is a measure of success there. Do we want guns on campuses? Absolutely not. But we are doing an awful lot. Let me share just a couple things with the board. Early next week, you'll see we're launching a new campaign about I Can, and you'll tie into guns. I don't want to spoil it, but I think you'll be pleasantly pleased with the work that we're going to do across this district to talk about the horrid impact of guns, but more importantly, the positive impact of young people. We have a number of anonymous reporting tools on every one of our web pages, but also throughout the system. Young people can report guns. If they see one, they can say something anonymously. We've had thousands of people in this district in the past 2 months, 3 months, go through active survival training, which is what young people would experience, but also the adults who are privileged to serve them would experience if an event, that horrific moment, acts. We've hired dozens of new counselors. We've hired dozens of new social workers and psychologists. We have, I think, installed hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cameras and locks. My thanks to the county commissioners for giving us $4.1 million to safen our facilities. So it is not as if we've been sitting back not doing anything during all this time. We've changed entryways, doorways. We've strengthened security cameras. We've installed our first full school panic cards, which we'll be launching shortly once we get down a couple of the procedures that we want to follow once there is something discovered on a campus. And just last week, I was introduced to our new gun dog, who is in the district and is now being trained. He lives here with us right now, and he will help expedite some of the things that we do. We absolutely know that the wanding system is not something that we're going to do with whole schools because, quite frankly, it takes too much time away from instruction. But we do know this, that it is a deterrent. Young people have not been adversely impacted by it, but we've done not just classroom-based sweeps, but we've now completed our first building-wide sweep. We did that just today, and we'll be looking at some other venues to do some other things. I'm really not sure that we're going to move towards that airport-style security where you walk through a magnum, I can't say the word, a metal detector rather than the scientific name. Thank you. I'll go there.
Out of the mouths of babes.
But we will, we're not saying that we won't, but we're also saying that right now it doesn't fit into the plan. Finally, I would say this, I heard a lot of folks talking about our curriculum and our sense of urgency, and I share much of that with them, but I would also say that, people who kind of laugh off the fact that we have African American studies now in all 17 of our comprehensive high schools and that we're going to add Latinx studies at our high schools in the fall are really missing a big part of the picture. Yes, those are classes, but they were classes that weren't offered across the system, and so we are going to offer them. But beyond that, you've heard me talk consistently about a guaranteed viable curriculum in which all kids can see themselves and the contributions of their people in the curriculum. And so we've been working very, very hard on that. So, we're not trying to solve this problem by saying a standalone class that you may or may not take. We're taking a comprehensive look at our entire curriculum. I apologize to people who think that we don't have a sense of urgency, but it does take time to impact not just the curriculum that 150,000 kids use, but that 19,000 adults have to touch in some way. Whether you're a food service worker, whether you're a bus driver, you have to be engaged with this change in curriculum. That leads me to this important point. We've had over 5,000 of our team members now go through cultural competence training. Is that enough? Probably not. But that's not something that we're not paying attention to as we wait to have this policy, because in fact, we do have a policy right now in equity. It's not as strong as I think the board members would like, and I think the time that you're spending to go through it is time that is going to be well spent and will position us to do great things for our kids in the future. So I simply wanted to say to those who come, we share your sense of urgency. We absolutely will get there, but we did not get into this mess that we're in overnight. We won't get out overnight, but there is a sense of urgency. That doesn't mean that we're complacent. It means that we're being methodical, systematic, so that we can affect the education for all kids. We do know that through a change in both the reporting requirements and also our alignment of curricular resources, we've moved significantly bigger number of kids into CTE certifications that will allow them to be successful in the 21st century in careers. I think that the numbers that I've seen is we've moved from over 400 or 500 kids just 3 years ago, prior to my coming, to over 4,000 kids in this past year that have some industry-based certification or a career path with a concentration of courses. So we are doing some things. I want the board members to know that. But I also remember what I was told some years ago when I was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that, when you point a finger at somebody, you got to remember there are three pointing back at you. So we accept the responsibility for what we have to do. And one of the things I think we absolutely have to do is better communicate with our constituencies. I was reminded of that the other day when I met with a group of area ministers. When we told them the totality of what we were doing, I won't say that they exhaled and were pleased, but I will say this. They said, we wish we would have known. And that falls back on the superintendent, and that falls back on my leadership team. We will do a better job with that as we go forward. The last thing that I will say as part of my report is I listened to an impassioned plea from some of our schools that were affected by the change in the summer learning calendar. Well, it's too early to announce the things that we're working on. I want the board to know, as we said last time after that calendar was informal conversations, we absolutely are looking at our summer food service program. We're looking at enrichment activities for these young people. We are also looking at opportunities for our employees who would be adversely affected for this through our summer school programs and some of our other things. We're just not there yet in order to announce those things, but I want the board to know we simply are not just sitting on our hands and saying, oh, the decision was made. We're trying to help our team, and I think we'll be able to announce some things probably within the next month to maybe 3 weeks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, I will recognize any board member who wishes to make a report. Ms. Marshall.
Thanks. I want to comment on something that I get asked a lot in my area. How are the pairings going? The folks in my district had probably the most significant changes in student assignment 2 years ago. And so this year, we're coming at the, believe it or not, one day we'll have spring break, with the first year of the paired elementary schools. And I just want to let the community know that while this is hard work and it was a difference for parents and what they had expected and for their students for what they have expected. I think it's turned out beautifully. Again, there have been some bumps in the road, but folks have been working really hard to overcome those. And so we've got some really dynamic classrooms and schools that are very focused on the ages of the children in those schools. And last week, several of us got to attend the 5th grade IB presentations at Cotswold Elementary. And it was just stunning to see all these groups of students all mixed up. They were doing these incredible presentations as you walked from table to table, standing there talking about their research, their findings, going through their speeches over and over again to the large amount of community members that came through. Just so much pride and well-deserved pride. So I'm very proud of the people in my district for their continued work. Next year, Sedgefield Middle opens in a bit of a different way than it was several years ago. It's been a lot of work going on there, a lot of work left to go, but I'm just very thankful for all the administration help and all the families and the students that are making some really great things happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Jones?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to reflect a little bit on the K-2 suspension mid-year report for 2018-19. It is critical that we look at it through the lens of high expectations and excellence. It is critical that we have a district-wide initiative in establishing behavioral norms for students in high-poverty schools that are consistent with high expectation for all students. We know nationally and here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, we hear over and over the disproportionality of out-of-school suspension and in-school suspension for black youth, particularly black males. But again, looking at it through the lens of high expectations and excellence, the central focus of questions I'm asking tonight to be inclusive of the report so that it does meet that rigor standard of high expectations and excellence, for me to be able to answer questions in the community regarding from teachers and from bus drivers and others. Such questions is what evidence-based or successful strategies are being utilized to make our out-of-school suspensions or in-school suspensions more successful in terms of not having to utilize that. I see that the kindergarten grade for students, kindergarten for one out-of-school suspension actually rose from 25 in 2017-2018 school year to 35 in 2018-2019. This begs the question of how we utilize homeschool partnerships and the quintessential social worker to help facilitate positive school behaviors for school newbies entering a structured environment. The aggressive behaviors leading to out-of-school suspensions in K-2 decreased from 33 in 2017-18 to 13 in 2018-2019. That this is significant. However, how did we get this improvement is important. Important in terms of excellence and actual improvement in child behavior and understanding of the behavioral norms. Did we change what is defined as aggressive behavior? Did teachers get training on how to extinguish aggressive behaviors? I ask these questions because they are issues of holding high expectations and standards of excellence for our youth. Secondly, these questions have bearing on teacher retention, where teachers are frustrated and slamming the classroom door, stating they won't be back. Thirdly, it impacts a school's ability to get substitute teachers, requiring the use of disperse and bounce. Hardly a quality learning experience for students. The bottom line, it is critical that we have a district-wide initiative in establishing behavioral norms for students in poverty schools that are consistent with high expectations for all students. These are not questions that I expect responses to tonight, but they are qualitative questions that address high expectations and excellence in future reports on K-2 suspensions.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. And one of the things that we had talked about during our retreat was that when we have questions like that pertaining to a report here at the dais, that you would get those to the superintendent and the board chair, and then responses will be given out to each board member.
Okay.
Thank you. So we'll look forward to that email coming in with those questions on it. Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Byers-Bailey.
Thank you. I have 3 things I'd like to mention this evening. The first is I want to congratulate the West Charlotte Lions as they roar through the basketball finals and are headed towards the ultimate goal. Go Lions. The second is District 2 has 2 high schools in the new bond. One is a replacement school and one is a new school. So both schools have had their first round of community input and have an opportunity to make some choices as to what they want their new school to look like. But with the replacement school, you've got a lot of stuff that's got to go from one place to the other. So West Charlotte has had a community meeting of selected alumni along with the architects and other staff as to what artifacts are going to go from the old school to the new school. That was very successful. It was very enlightening, and the architects got to hear a little bit of the history that the older of us know and they were oblivious to. But there's going to be another round of community input, and I want both communities, both West Charlotte and the Olympic communities, to keep your ears peeled. We're going to have a second round of community input, and I think you're going to be delighted with what you get to see. So just keep your ears peeled. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to give the date for it?
No, not yet.
All right. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Strain.
Thank you. I want to do 2 things with the report. I want to first recognize one of our students out there that was recently recognized in the news, but I want to lift him up as well. This is a student who is adopted, and he decided that for his birthday, he wanted to help out some other folks. And so he decided that he wanted to raise money to support the adoption of children. And in fact, just said, I want to raise money and support the adoption of a child. In fact, I would like to do that every single year for the rest of my life, he said. So what does he do? He has this conversation with his parents, and his parents are thinking, okay, well, where do we write the check? What's the donation amount? And he said, no, I'm not doing this with you. This is my project. And so he put together a plan and a video, and he raised enough money to support the adoption of 3 children. Wow. Through putting together this video, making it public, and raising money. And it was just a phenomenal job that Grady did, and has been recognized, but I wanted to lift him up as well. Thank you very much, Grady. I also want to recognize our policy IKE. I've also been looking at that recently, and I've been looking at that with a lens to exactly what it's called, the promotion, retention, and acceleration of students. And so there were speakers today that called out this policy. I had been looking at it previously based on some other speakers, and in fact an organization called Students for Educational Reform who had brought it to our attention. They had brought it to our attention in the context of some of the programs that we have, which is supporting promotion of students, but by definition in that policy says in order to be promoted, a student must demonstrate mastery of grade level skills. So that's actually in the regulation that supports the policy. But that's what was called out for falling short. What was called out this evening was some work that we're not doing that needs to be done in terms of supporting folks and their achievement of those promotions, of the mastery of content details. And so I want to thank Chairman Griffin and the Students for Educational Reform on holding our feet to the fire, our collective feet to the fire, for delivering for our children and per our policies and regulations. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Sawyer?
I just want to invite people to a wonderful event a week from tonight at McGlowan Theater, the Teacher Talks, sponsored by the CMS Foundation. I attended last year. I can't wait to attend this year. These are teachers who will be presenting their big idea, and it's a great evening. It is free. It's at McGlowan Theater, and if you can find it on Facebook, if you just Google Teacher Talks, and you can sign up and get a ticket. It's an inspiring evening that really highlights the excellent teachers we have in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. I'd also like to extend an invitation to the 2 remaining community engagement sessions on the budget. There's one April 3rd at Mallard Creek High School and April 11th at Crown Point Elementary. So those are 2 dates where you can come and learn about the CMS budgeting process and offer your ideas for what your priorities are and help us serve the community better. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ella Stewart?
Thank you. I know earlier this evening we took a moment to recognize individuals who work within the school system, particularly supporting our students' health as it relates to social emotional health. One of the folks that was in the audience, she's no longer here, but she was here in support of her colleagues, was Rachel Rosenfeld. Rachel is a school psychologist at Lincoln Heights Academy, and I've had the opportunity to know her for several years, and she was recognized last month with the Advocacy Award from Mental Health America for her work around social emotional learning and public policy and advocacy. So while we were recognizing the other individuals, wanted to make sure that we lifted up what she's doing out in the community and in the schools also. While I was not able to attend their event, I did try to send many, many people to it because I believe in the importance of what they're doing. Many of you on the board are aware of a group called Profound Gentlemen, but those in the community may not be aware of this group that was started by 2 young African-American males who also happen to be educators. We need more of those. They should not be unicorns in our school district and across the country. But they started the organization with the goal of increasing the number of Black male educators and supporting them in their journey in the classroom and in the schoolhouse. And each year they've hosted what they call CIA, Community Impact Assembly, and it's basically a conference to engage Black males from all over the state. And so they had a wonderful event, and I just want to shout them out for what they're doing to support the growth of educators in this space of Black males and encourage them to keep doing what they've been doing. Lastly, the last portion of my report is more of a personal nature. I do want to thank those who in the community of Mecklenburg County and folks from all across the state who were so very helpful when our family experienced what had the opportunity to be a very serious crisis. When my grandmother went missing about a week and a half ago, it was probably one of the worst phone calls I ever wanted to receive. But I bring it up not because of the support that people around this community gave, people that we know and people that we don't, but also I want to shine a light on the importance of silver alerts and amber alerts in our community. I know many of us have our phones and our devices, and we get that annoying sound when it's talking about a silver alert or an amber alert. And I can tell you, as a loved one, as a family member of someone that one of those alerts is about, when you see those, please take them seriously. Please take an opportunity to find out who is missing, what the information is, and to try to help. Even if you're not in that area, let people know that you know who are in that community and ask them to help, because the more hands and feet that are on the ground being active, the better the outcomes. People can be found, and they can be found alive and hopefully unharmed. And so I would just ask that each of you, the next time you get one of those on your phone, or if you're driving down the highway and you see the signs lit up about a missing child, about a missing senior, that you try to do your part and help out. Being on the family end of one of those, I can tell you that it matters, and it matters more than you can imagine. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we did have two people sitting at our dais that participated in that. I think Ms. Sawyer did, and so did Mr. Battle with
very
profound gentleman.
Okay. Celebrated the dinner.
All right, you went to eat. Okay.
We went to the party.
Okay. Ms. Dashew.
I will speak quickly because I have a lot of updates. I've had the opportunity to visit lots of schools in almost all of my colleagues' districts in the last couple of weeks. So just a lot of thanks and shout outs to give here. Principal Birch at Levine Middle College, to you and your staff, thank you for graciously allowing me to sit in on your active survival training and participate in that. It was not at all what I expected, although I wasn't quite sure what to expect. But it was very powerful, very well done, very sobering. If at some point we're able to offer that to parents, maybe on PTA nights, I think that would be a really great move. So also Principal Callaway and Amanda Thompson from Walter G. Byers, thank you very much for inviting me to come out to your school and just showing off all the wonderful STEM work that you're doing and your incredible aquaponics garden, and just such a wonderful atmosphere and feeling in your school, and just the peaceful buzz of students studying. It just felt really good to be there, and I also just appreciate all the insights that you both shared with me. Principal Switzer and your team, thank you for inviting me out on February 27th to Ardrey Kell High School for the African American Read-In. I read to 2 classes, and the piece that I chose to read was Frederick Douglass's July 4th, 1852 speech, which if you have not read it, I encourage everyone to Google that and give it a read. It's a tough message, and it's just very relevant, even though it was written in 1852. Principal Sudamak, Kennedy Middle School. I had an opportunity to visit your school on the evening of February 28th when the Steel Creek Residents Association, when you hosted their meeting. I just can't believe I haven't gotten out there before. It is just so cool what you have going on. Was very impressed with your overflowing trophy case of all the tech awards that your team has won. And I definitely want to come back and see those indoor drones in action. And then finally, on Friday, March 1st, Principal Hash, this was my first chance to get out to Cotswold since the Cotswold-Billingsville merger, and as my colleague Margaret Marshall said, I'm just so impressed. And the 5th graders, some of whom had been at Billingsville last year and some of whom had been at Cotswold, and now they're all together at Cotswold, presented with such skill and confidence and clarity on their 5th grade IB projects. It was just really cool to experience, and thank you for that opportunity. So I can't wait to see what the next 2 weeks holds.
Thank you. Okay, Kendall?
I changed my mind. I do actually have something to say. I just wanted to thank Ms. Amanda Thompson for allowing me to participate in the conversation that we had about the actual, Jesus, I'm blanking.
Code of Student Conduct.
Code of Student Conduct. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to thank you, and it was very eye-opening to see what the parents had to think about it, because I only know from the student perspective. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. I want to give a personal shout out to Ms. Boyd over at University Park and the fourth graders that put on the show Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Those fourth graders did an exceptional job, even though the lead got a little frustrated because she forgot her lines and ran off stage. She calmed herself and she came back in with a bang. So, you know, that's a hard play for fourth graders. But they had to sing, they had to know their lines, and I love the Oompas. Yeah, I'm sitting there in my chair and I want to go up and down with them, but it was a great night out and lots of parents were there to cheer their children on, so thank them for that. And for Ms. Craven Howell, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come out for all of the IB reauthorizations and whatever we do there. You all are doing an excellent job with that, and I look forward to this Friday for Blythe. So thank you very much, and I enjoyed the conversation that the parents had there at Marie G. Davis. And as a board, I think we can affirm the action that we took on behalf of Marie G. Davis being a positive one for the community over there, and some of the parents did express that. And so even the visitors that were there, they wanted to know, you know, how did that come about because of where it sits. But I think it's a revitalization for that school and a good direction for it to go in. And I look forward to the budget hearing down at Crown Point, my neck of the woods. So I won't come up to Mallard Creek. I'll stay and wait for Crown Point. So without further ado, I'm going to say, board members, we need to turn and wish Miss Carol Sawyer a happy birthday.
Oh, wait, what? I didn't know that.
And hope you have many more. So, now, at any rate, and hearts and minds, I will now entertain a motion for the board to go into closed session to discuss certain personnel matters. This motion will be made pursuant to sections 143-318.11A6 of the North Carolina General Statutes. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, okay. The board will now go into closed session, and superintendent and staff, it will not be for you. We're just going to be looking at the second part of superintendent's evaluation and our continuation of it from the retreat.
So go home.
So,
Long day.
everybody's excused except board members. Kendall, you don't have to stay on. All right.
Thank you.